Perfect. Well, thank y'all so much. Thank y'all so much for being here. Thank you to the Portland Astrology School for inviting me again. I really like talking to y'all. This is fun. This is a real, and this you know one of the at the beginning of the year this year. I I did a little Happy New Year thing, and I was really sort of excited about this year and this new year because it's more of a new beginning than other New Years are. There's always like a New Year, New Me kind of situation that goes on, right? But like this time, we really have a very genuine new reality or new life that's going to be coming out in and that we're going to be sort of like creating here. And so this having the opportunity to really dig into what that might look like and how we might do well and all these kinds of things. This is a great opportunity for us. And so I'm gonna go ahead and dig into the thing. Um, yeah, I think that's all I need to say before we get started. Great. Thank y'all. Really appreciate you. So yes, we have moved into a new era. Many of you, if you've been following my Instagram or my Patreon, may have heard me exhaustively talk about Saturn, Jupiter in Aquarius. I don't necessarily need to rehash that whole thing right now, but it's very relevant to what we're going to talk about today. What I'm going to talk about is how, in this new era, we are going to think with like some new ideas to think with. And so, what is this new era? Well, this new era is we just had the first of many, about 10 conjunctions of Saturn and Jupiter, which are going to happen in air signs. So for the last 200 years prior to this, they had been happening in Earth signs, and so Saturn and Jupiter. Their conjunctions as well as their oppositions are really these are have long been considered sort of like the tent posts of history. They're places that you can sort of like see what is really real about history and what the sort of like structure of reality or at least like the official story. You know, the we can see the structure of that by taking a look at Saturn Jupiter conjunctions. So to see Saturn Jupiter in conjunctions in Earth for the past 200 years. So prior to this point where we are right now, for 200 years we had Saturn Jupiter conjunctions every 20 years in Earth signs. And so this speaks to a structured or reality or the official story having much to do with what is physical, with what is earthly, with what is solid, with the things that sort of like hold together and sink down. Now we have moved firmly into an era where we're going to have Saturn Jupiter conjunctions in air signs for the next 200 years. Now, yes, there was one in 1980 that was Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Libra. That was technically the first one. Then we had one in Taurus in 2000. So we had one of the old one, and then we just had this past one, which was in Aquarius. And so now we are firmly in. This happens a lot. There's sometimes crossfade with this kind of thing. The end of one cycle sometimes coincides with the beginning of the new cycle. But now, since we are firmly into it, we're only doing air sign conjunctions now. We can really speak to the arrival of the future, the new era, which is upon us. And so we're going to be doing air things for this next 200 years. That's like where we're going in life here. So, rather than looking at Earth, Earth is gonna, Earth stacks really easily, right? Earth is heavy and solid, and it's very much about sort of like building the things on top of each other, or there's something really solid and firm and sort of like tangible about Earth in a way that air just isn't. Air is invisible most of the time. Sometimes you can get smoke and things like this, but by and large, the air is invisible, and it's consistently moving around. There's this like continuous flow which is associated with air. We can think about respiration and think about how like there's an in breath and then there's an out breath, and there's this consistent like flow that is associated with that. Also, much is said about how water is life, and this is very true. Water is absolutely life, it's fundamental. But at the same time, you can go for a day or 2 days without having any new water in your body. You can only really go probably like 3 minutes, kind of tops, without any new air in your body. And so there's something really like super foundational here, as it comes to like the breath of life and this kind of thing. We can also think about not only our own in breath and out breath, but we can also think about the exchange that we do with the plants as well. So the plants breathe out what we breathe in, and then we breathe out what the plants breathe in. And so there's this continuous exchange, an exchange not only of like particles and molecules, but also an exchange of information that goes along with this. We are literally in contact with the plants that we are around, and the plants that we are around are literally in contact with us, and we accomplish this through the air. And so this kind of formula, this sort of idea of respiration, of like continuous flow of there and here and back, that sort of thing is going to be an important thing for us to sort of like to orient ourselves around. The very much my practice is as an astrologer is what's going on in the sky or what's going on in time, and then how can I do my best to dance alongside that, so that we can like move harmoniously together. So I don't necessarily get to choose what kind of era I'm in, but I do get to choose how I respond to it. And so if we're going to be in a moment where respiration or wind currents or any of that sort of stuff is going to be more foundational or more important than it had been previously, then knowing that and orienting toward that can be a useful tool. For anyone who is like magically operant, if you're going to be doing any like intentional spell work or anything like that, this can be really helpful in like target selection and this kind of thing. But then also just the magic of everyday life, of living and doing stuff in the world is going to also be affected by this. So it's helpful to think about this. One other thing that air is associated with, and the air signs are associated with, is mind and intelligence and communication, the communication of ideas. This idea that in the air we can communicate, that there's this kind of, again, we're back in this like sort of back and forth kind of situation. The same way that the respiration is communicative, the way that we can interact with plants and plants can interact with us via respiration, then the same sort of communicative dynamic comes through whenever we talk about air and air dynamics. Whenever people talk about Gemini, for example, then people always talk about moving back and forth and back, and like the kind of duality, and we can think about the Lover's card in tarot. There are two of them, and the interaction of the two is the way that this operates, right? Or Libra, the balancing scales, et cetera, right? So this is very much what we're going to think about. So we're going to be really, as we are working with what it is to live in the era of air, what it means to communicate and what it means to think thoughts or have mind, to deal with information. All of this stuff is going to be really very important. Somebody, I think it was Alison McDowell, who said, data is the new coal, right? So coal for the last 200 years had been where all the money was, right? In fossil fuels. But now that's less valuable than data is. It's less valuable than information is. And so, we've been seeing that building up for the past maybe 40 years or so, since the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction in Libra, right? And we've been seeing that sort of build up, but now here we are, and it has emerged, and we're doing this thing now. So then, I am here to ask the question: what would it look like if we were going to ride airwaves rather than Earth ones? One more thing about the time that we're living in, and so I just spoke about a 200-year process, right? So and especially one of the things I'm very excited about now is that in 200 years, whatever we create now is going to seem normal. And so we have an opportunity, we have a unique opportunity to really generate a world that we want to live in. So, but what's going on now, like in the now, is Mercury retrograde is happening also in these air signs. So for 2021 and 22, we're going to have Mercury retrogrades in the air signs. Even today, we have a Mercury station in Aquarius. And it has been, Mercury been retrograde than a mug. I don't know about y'all, but this Mercury retrograde has been like really hitting me hard. And so I see in this a very good opportunity to really investigate what really is the world that we're living in now. What is it really? We've got this Mercury retrograde right in the area where Saturn and Jupiter made their conjunction, and then conjoining Jupiter even, and getting fairly close to Saturn. It's not going to conjoin Saturn, right? It's going to get pretty close and then go back forward again. But like, this whole dynamic, what's really going on here, and what does it mean to be in a space? Mercury retrograde is the deep diver, right? This is our chthonic Mercury. This is our like subterranean, our psychopomp Mercury, the one who is like unafraid of the deep and the dead, the one who is unafraid of getting dirty and gross and seeing what's going on here. A lot of times, Mercury retrograde will coincide with delays and with problems, miscommunications, or errors, in whatever it is. You put the wrong address on the thing, and so it's sent to the wrong place, or like any number of things like that. You said a thing, and maybe you didn't use the right word, and then it was also misconstrued later. And so there's these kind of like chain of details that get into trouble here, right? And so a lot of times a good way to really think can be to like, you know, if you were in a hurry to get a thing done, then to have some stuff get in your way is very frustrating. But it can be really helpful to get into a place to where you are maybe doing a little better work, or maybe being a little more thorough, or maybe learning how to deal with things next time, and this kind of thing. And so for the next 2 years, we're going to have Mercury retrograde in air signs, really sort of like looking at, well, what does it mean to what do air dynamics look like, and what does it mean to really engage with that? We're going to have some opportunities to make some big mistakes here, and yes, I mean opportunities. We're going to have opportunities to make mistakes. And um, I who was it, Seth Godin or something like that, one of these like business entrepreneur dudes, had said that the your greatest success lies at the end of a road of failures. So get to failing now. You know what I mean? And so we're at the beginning of this process right now. And so if we can charge boldly into the solutions that we think we've created, right? We just had a whole conference in Aquarius. We just had a gang of planets just show up in Aquarius, right? And really sort of like, with Saturn there, and Saturn in Aquarius is like laws and regulations, policies, things of this nature. We made a plan with this, right? We had a lot of problems that showed up in 2020. And then now we're going to make a plan about how to deal with it. The thing about making a plan is we plan and God laughs, right? And so to try to get our plans to come off well, is naturally going to look like some problems. Some stuff is going to show up. Some things that we didn't think about already are going to show up here. This is a real good opportunity for us to build something helpful, for us to build something worthwhile as we move through this period, this 200-year period, right? And so 2021 and 2022 really give us a great opportunity. So let's lean into that. So then, lean into what? What does this mean? Like what kind of new thoughts can we think during this time, and what sort of stuff can we look at and try to think through and think with, and all this sort of stuff? Well, I mentioned intelligence and communication and the concept of mind before as being associated with air. And I think that that's a really good place to spend some time and to think a few thoughts about what it is, really trying to come to a definition of what mind is can be kind of difficult if you start to really think about it. We have for a long time we've sort of existed in this old paradigm here, and so it's this idea that mind is a function of the brain, and so having a brain generates mind, and so to have mind you have to have a brain. But then also mind is also often limited to humans, and in many cases it's been sort of like, only some humans even have mind. For a long time it was said that, like cows didn't feel pain or pigs didn't feel pain and that sort of stuff. Oxes, mules, like work animals, these sort of things. In order to justify slavery, then it was also said that black people didn't have feelings as well. By the same token, they're like oxen. And so, so what we can see here is the erosion of the idea that anybody except like white dudes has mind at all. And so then this has then like really given us a skewed idea of what mind is and what information is and how information exists in the world. There's this strong, humans have the mind. Humans have big brains and have all of the mind in the world. The mind that exists in the world exists inside a human head, and then and that intelligence that comes with that is the intelligence. It's the right intelligence, and that intelligence confers power, and that might makes right, or having more power means that, if you have that power, then you can do whatever you want, and you don't have to listen to anybody else. That we've all seen this happening, right? I don't need to like belabor this point a bunch. Y'all know what this is already, right? But we don't necessarily have to think that way. We don't necessarily have to live that way. We One of the things that we find more and more is that information exists all over the damn place. It is everywhere. There's information. So we can think about like the respiration that I mentioned before, right? The sort of like me particles are interacting with tree particles, and tree particles are interacting with me particles, and they're actually interacting. It's not like they're like sort of like going past each other, like, they just like, you can't see each other or any of that. There's truly a lot of interaction that takes place here. And for me to exist in a place that has a lot of trees, or for a human body to exist in a place that has a lot of trees, that's generally a happier person than someone who doesn't live around a lot of trees. And we can sort of like, we can guess as to why that might be. Maybe there's something visual going on. Maybe people just like to be able to see trees and stuff like that. Maybe a painting would do just as well. Or we can ask all these kinds of questions. There's a lot. One of the things that I've been really excited about recently is studies on the microbiome, and how the microbiome is basically a giant web of microorganisms which exchange information. That's what they do. It's the whole thing is like a network of information exchange. It can be likened to the internet in some very real ways. The mycelial networks are also the same way. But maybe we can consider fungi microorganisms, and maybe that's going to get looped into the microbiome and all this. But really, what we can see is that even the soil itself, even the earth, has mind. And so there's something really interesting here about the earth to air transition, which shows that, or gives us the opportunity to reinstate mind into earth. And I do mean reinstate, because the idea that earth is mindless or doesn't have mind or thoughts or ideas or desires or any of these kinds of things, this is a new idea, right? This is not an ancient idea. The ancient ideas are always the mountain has life, the tree has life, and is somebody to think about. I we can just, this seems so wildly apparent to me, that it feels a little silly to talk about it at any kind of length. But it's just so not accepted in the norm that, it bears mentioning some examples. Think about when bees find flowers, right? There's a bee gets to a patch of flowers and then comes back to tell all the other bees where the really great flowers are. Now, the bee doesn't have a central nervous system, right? The bees don't have brains, and bees don't. Neither do bees use words, and so those are, some pretty like common ways of thinking about intelligence or mind or something like that. And yet, the bee, through an interpretive dance, can show the other bees where the meadow is and get everybody to go there, and everybody gets fed. We can see ants also organizing whole armies, whole teams to like build and destroy structures like this. The coordinating giant teams. We can see how they can operate as one mind even. And so the idea that they're not communicating is ludicrous. We can also think about sunflowers, and sunflowers are actually one of my favorite examples because sunflowers, what sunflowers do is they look at the sun. The sun comes up on the one side, and then it goes through the southern sky if you're in the northern hemisphere, and then it goes down on the other side on the west. And the sunflowers, they just look at it all day. And I really like the idea that sunflowers look at the sun because they like to look at the sun. We can talk about it in, I guess, Earth terms would be, like the sort of mechanism that drives it, and all the molecules that like, sort of like make the sunflower do the thing. But it feels so like mindless when you do that. When the fact is that sunflowers like to face the sun, and so they do. And they have the power that it takes to move their bodies in order to do what it is that they want to do. And the so again, it's completely ludicrous that plants don't have mind, or that animals don't have mind, or that even mountains or rivers don't have mind. Many times you have but to ask them, and they will tell you that they do. And the reason why people sometimes think that they don't have mind is because they haven't asked. And so, if we're thinking a little bit about continuous flow of information and back and forth and forth and back, then maybe some listening is in order here, right? Continuous flow doesn't flow in one direction. Continuous flow has a back and forth, a forth and back. There's something cyclical here. And so maybe asking the question and seeing what kind of response you get can be a good thing to sort of pay attention to. This is here's a really great example as well. Who in this picture is thinking? To me, it seems clear that everyone in this picture is thinking, and they're all thinking about the same thing. We can see how everyone's attention is all in the same place. And so it can be helpful to just remember that, and the dog is the great example as well, right? Everybody knows that your dog has mind. Everyone who's ever interacted with a dog has seen the dog have its own desires and wants and things that are different from what you want and stuff like that, right? We know how this works already. And so it doesn't, because we know how this works and that this works already, once we can see that this dog, who is like somebody you already know, has some mind, then it doesn't take very much to sort of backpedal from there and go, okay, wait a minute. If the dog has mind, then maybe foxes have mind also. And if foxes have mind, then maybe birds have mind. And if birds have mind, then, and back and back and back, right? And so, so this is just something important to think about. Let's think about who has mind. So, one of my really favorite authors in the whole wide world is Robin Wallkimmer. I think that she is the best. She wrote this great book called Braiding Sweetgrass. And recently she wrote this essay called The Serviceberry. And I've talked a little bit about the serviceberry before. So again, I'm not going to necessarily go in forever about it. But there's a really good idea here about ways that we can interact with each other that can be helpful, that can be mutually beneficial. So if we're in a space where everyone has mind, and down to the corn plants and all this, right? And we're also in a space, so then we have to acknowledge that some kind of personhood, there's somebody there, right? And if there's somebody there, then we can sort of like take two two tracks here. We can do the one where we like fight everybody, but that's really exhausting and terrifying. Honestly, it's just like it's a very fearful way to live. And so our other option is to cooperate. You know, and so at the individual level, then competition makes more sense. For your own self can get stuff by winning it, but at once we get to this like very big level where there's groups and stuff, then it really makes much more sense to cooperate. And we can see this in all of the way in like plant dynamics, for example, plants and like the service berry. Let's take the service berry as our example here. So the service berry makes a bunch of berries. The berries are sweet and they are delicious. So the service berry takes free resources like the sun and the air and water and turns them into sugar that is delicious for everyone. Now, the service berry has two options here. The service berry can take all of the sugar that it generates and it can hoard it for itself, or it can give it away. There's what Robin Wallkimmer says about this. Oh, and also, if you want, if you like get the slides to this, then this right here, this is a link to the essay, and so you can hear her much more eloquent description of the situation than if you do that. But so one of the things that she says here is she quotes an indigenous person who is nameless, but who had a big hunt and came back with much more meat than his own family could eat. And so rather than storing the food and freezing it or drying it or any of these kinds of things, he had a feast over. And when he was asked why he didn't store the meat, he was like, "What are you talking about? Store it. I store my meat in the belly of my brother," right? And so here we have the idea of like giving with the idea that getting might happen as well. We can work together here. I can bring you a bunch of meat that is my that's my talent or my purview. That's my area of expertise. I can do that. But then when I come back, maybe my shoes need mending, and maybe that's your area of expertise, right? And it's not, and it doesn't even necessarily need to be a one-to-one like that, right? The service berries, for example, they give away so much sugar. They just give it away. Please take this sugar. But then they also sort of expect that the birds, for example, these birds here who are just loving these berries, look so delicious. They take the berries and they eat them up, but they eat so many of them that they can't keep them in, and they vomit a bunch of berries around. But in doing that, they've scratched up the seeds, and that helps promote germination. So the service berries are then planted by this method. Or it happens in bird shit as well. It also happens in human shit. This same kind of dynamic shows up here, where there's a lot of paying it forward that goes on. And so this kind of gift economy, rather than a market economy, right? A market economy, which is the one that we're most familiar with, a market economy is the one that sort of bases itself as the study of scarcity or how people deal with scarcity. Now, one of the things that is really interesting here is that the word economy and the word ecology are rooted in they have the same eco word, which is a Greek root, which means from oikos, which means home. And so it's the way of managing home. Both of them are the way of managing home, sort of like the same way that astrology and astronomy are sort of like the same thing, but then diverged at some point. Then this is a similar sort of ecology and economy. Ecology turned into the sort of like conservation. It's like where tree huggers go, and then economy. This is where like sort of like I don't know, accountants, math nerds go. And so there's this divergence, but really what we're looking at here are different ways of taking care of home. The economists maybe prefer to store meat or store sugar or whatever, right? Because the individual is concerned about the individual and the individual's own prosperity in the future. Whereas the ecologist sees a network, sees a web. sees how we're all in this thing kind of together a little bit. It's all one big world, and we are all related. And so, sometimes it's worth it to build a watering hole for wildlife, not because you want to like lure them in and get and kill them or something like that, but because it's better if the wildlife has water. Period. It's better if they can drink. And so there's something really interesting here about like engaging with the gift economy and engaging with the idea of gifts and stuff in the first place. Here, you know, one of the things that comes up here is when you receive a gift, when someone gives you something, then gratitude is one of the things that comes up. And how how beautiful and how great could our lives be if we were to lead with gratitude? But then not only gratitude, but also reciprocity. And reciprocity takes us back again. So this is back into our give and take. This is our communication. This is our forth and back, right? So like when someone gives, then the recipient of the gift feels some kind of way about like, oh, I received something and this thing is beautiful, and I should not only treat this thing with care and love the way that I might treat this person. This is a representative of this person, but then and you won't do that the same way for a commodity of the same thing. Somebody gives you a spoon and you're like, oh, this, I love this spoon. It's different than if you buy the same spoon. It's just a spoon, right? And in doing that, so the commodity spoon feels like resource, whereas the gift spoon feels like relationship. And so here, this is really the crux of the thing, right? So I'm really pushing toward a relational metaphysics, right? The idea that we are bound up in relationship with others, and that this hanging out together is indicated in the astrology already, right? The like a relational metaphysics is indicated here, and so if we were to move in the direction of gratitude and reciprocity, then this might be, in fact, a more harmonious dynamic, a more harmonious way for us to live our lives as we move forward. Especially since we already have seen how the market economy turns out. It looks whack. It looks whack for a lot of people, and not, like it looks whack for the majority, for the wide majority of people. So here are some new things that we can think with, some new ideas and new ideas. These are very old ideas. These are ancient ideas. You know what I mean? Robin Wallkimmer, she talks a lot about indigenous wisdom. And so the word indigenous means like before the colonizers got here, right? The most ancient known inhabitants of a place. That's what indigenous means. And so, this idea of a gift economy is an old idea. It's something that we can maybe come back to and think with again. So, one thing to bear in mind here is that this is not the dawning of the age of Aquarius. I know that the fifth dimension made that shit sound great. Um, but we're still far out from that. So the way that these kind of like astrological ages work, so at the birth of astrology, or at the moment of its coalescence, when Hellenistic astrology became a thing around the turn of the millennia, or the turn, from BC to CE, or BC to AD, what I mean here, about 2,000 years ago. When this happened, then they were measuring the first degree of Aries. The 0 degree of Aries when the sun hit 0 degrees of Aries, then that was the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. And so it was easy to just like put 0 Aries, spring equinox, they go together, right? But then what has happened is there has been a slow shift at a rate of about 1 degree every 72 years. And that's been moving backwards. It goes backwards in the order. And so over the past 2,000 years or so, it has changed pretty significantly. And now when the sun hits about 7 degrees of Pisces, that's 23 degrees backwards from Aries. When the sun hits 7 degrees of Pisces, that is the spring equinox in the northern hemisphere. This is the difference between the tropical and the sidereal zodiac, all this sort of stuff. So we are currently in the age of Pisces because the spring equinox coincides with the sun in Pisces. So we have another about 7 degrees to go before we enter the age of Aquarius. That's 7 times 72. This is like 500 years away. So we are not close to the dawning of the age of Aquarius. We're just not that close to that. And if it was the dawning of the age of Aquarius, it would probably be less fun than the people are talking about. Aquarius is a Saturn ruled sign. Even if this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Around this time when the song came out, then a lot of people were talking about how Uranus rules Aquarius and all this sort of stuff, which is not what I would do. But like even if this were the case, then Uranus ruling a whole era or a whole age, it sounds very volatile. It sounds very like surprises all the damn time. I don't know that would be more fun. Honestly, it might feel a little cataclysmic. It's been, there's a lot going on here. So this is not the dawning of the age of Aquarius. And so, these new ideas that I'm talking about here, or old ideas or whatever, this sort of mindset or this kind of thinking is not the only way that it can be done, right? Simply because we've moved into a new 200-year period does not mean that it's that like we can just leave things like slavery behind. It's done now. Whew, that sucked. Now we're into the future, and the future is great. That's not how this works. Imperial control mechanisms have been on the scene for a long time, for much longer than 200 years. Rick Tarnas in Cosmos and Psyche writes about the modern mind as sort of coming into existence about 500 years ago. Funnily enough, so did the transatlantic slave trade. And so this idea of the one mind and the kind of like isolated man who has all this mind and there's no other mind in the whole universe, and that whole thing with the Copernican shift and all this sort of stuff, that kind of mind that seeks to dominate the planet, that's been going on for longer than 200 years, right? And so this kind of this shift does not signal that we have made it to utopia now. This is a shift that signals that major things are changing, and so we have the opportunity to generate a utopia if we do it. If we get on the ball and we handle our business, then we can do that. And so that is the hope. That's the hope that I want to put forth in this talk. Not that we are here and we have arrived and this is what the future therefore is, right? Because we have not designed the future yet. Yes, the future is written in the stars and all this, but we can still do whatever we want in it. We're maybe going down a stream, but we can still shift it whichever way we want, right? We can go left, we can go right. Perhaps we can't go upstream, but we can go, we're still driving the ship here, right? And so we have an opportunity to think thoughts around reciprocity and gratitude and these kinds of dynamics. But that's not the only thing that's going on here. And so, it's worth thinking through, well, what does it look like if big business and the old paradigm, like what if they continue to do the thing, if imperial control continues as it has, then what does this mean? I think it's worth thinking about, well, so if what we're looking at is intelligence and we're looking at mind, then we also think about how the old paradigm posits that there's only one kind of mind, which is the like right one, or the one that like matters the most, and then that one is in charge, is the one that has power and has the authority to kind of do as it pleases in the world. Then things start looking like 1984 a little bit. Stuff starts to look a little it looks like there's only the one mind, and so the idea is to generate control around what goes on in mind. One of the things about 1984 is like we can really see you know mind control going on as a way of getting people to sort of fall in line. And it's not mind control in a like subliminal messages kind of way, right? It's more like in the way that language operates, right? This whole like double speak and double think kind of situation. You like say the one thing, but it kind of means the other thing, and all this sort of stuff, right? This is very, very aerodynamic stuff. It's interesting that 1984, this is our like this is like 1984 is just at the beginning of there we had just had a Saturn Jupiter conjunction in Libra, not that far before that, and so this sort of like speaks to the beginning of like the seed of what is going to happen here. So 1984, is supposed to be the end. It's when it like the thing is really big already. But we can see in the timing of that there's there's the seed of this kind of establishment that wants to take place here. We have already seen a push toward this. We've already seen a push toward the kind of like imperial control of mind and of communication. We're already like looking at a point here where the way that schools are being operated is being consolidated, and it's all pushed into the one area, and the one area is a digital space, right? It's not a place where people can get together and touch each other and that sort of stuff. Touching each other, that's very earth dynamic, right? We're not going to do that anymore. We're going to move toward digital schooling. We're going to move toward, these kind of like, transmissions of self as the way that we come to interact with each other. And we can see how, like, if this is the way that schools are going to be operated, then this is how the next generations are going to be, are going to feel like, this is the truth. This is the way that things do exist already. And so, this is just something to kind of think through here. So if this is kind of what wants to happen already, if things continue on the same path, then then 1984 is a little bit where things want to end up. We're moving in that direction already. And so, knowing then that data is the new coal and that informational dynamics are more important or more valuable than any of the stuff that we had been dealing with before, this gives us an insight as to where imperial control dynamics are going. But then it also gives us an insight as to what kind of dynamics we can push forward in our own lives, in our own spaces that can sort of sometimes it can even operate alongside the technocratic moment. Think of a gift economy, for example. You can still give gifts even though there's a market economy going on. You can still this is a time when you can still give somebody something, and you can even still like give somebody a political gift of some sort. You're trying to like get in good with somebody, and so you give them a gift, and then now they feel a little indebted to you, even though there's a market economy going on and all this sort of thing. Gifts are still a thing. And so you can still operate along those lines. You can still operate in a gift economy in your own community, in your own oikos, in your own home or area, right? And so here's something that we can think about doing together alongside whatever big business and big data and all this sort of stuff, whatever they're trying to do, is it can happen. And sometimes we can feel like a little powerless to stop that thing, right? But that doesn't mean that we can't operate in our own lives in a way that moves toward a more sustainable and more fun and more comfortable future for many of us.
Hey, Zamboni, just popping in with a time check. It's been 45 minutes. You have 30 left total.
30 minutes left. Okay, cool. Yeah. Great. So this really gets us to, like where to from here, right? And so I mentioned the gift economy. You can do a gift economy right now. You can do that fairly simply and easily. If this is going to be a language dynamic, we're looking at communications and we're looking at, um, you know, the way, we're looking at ways of thinking, and often ways of thinking in a human mind are going to be caught up in language. Then we can think about rerouting or reprogramming language and seeing how we can do a little bit better or do differently around language, right? And so, you know, as soon as we can grant the idea of mind to plants and to animals, then the question often becomes who rather than what. So, there's some birds flying in the sky and you don't recognize them. Then you can be like, who is that up there? Because that's somebody. Now we know that that's somebody. We know that that is somebody who has wants and desires and exists in the world, looking for pleasure and fun and food and sex and shit and all of the things that people do in the world, right? We can, in order to um, you know grant the fact that other people exist and that other life forms exist, then we can really begin to ask the question who rather than what. Also, just the simple fact of asking questions can be a really good way to engage this whole dynamic here. Um, an answer sort of stops. You give the answer, and then like that's what it is. That's it's done. It's declarative, right? Whereas a question often leads to, it can lead to answers, but it can also lead to more questions. And a good question, a really good question, will sort of pull on a thread and figure things out this way for a long time. And so the idea of asking questions and prioritizing asking questions versus giving answers or explanations, right? This is going to proliferate the idea of information. It's going to proliferate ideas in a much more dynamic kind of way than answering questions or answering giving some kind of declaration really uh, does. It just does a better job with this, you know. So asking good questions and then seeing about who is doing stuff rather than what is doing stuff. Like if somebody was asking about me and they used the term what, they'd be like, what's in, like, I'm in the kitchen, I'm cooking stuff, and they were like, what's in the kitchen right now? Like that's that, you've made me into an object in this moment, right? Rather than a subject who has, like I'm in there doing stuff because it's what people do in the kitchen, you know what I mean? Like so it's this kind of thing. So we can ask questions. We can change what to who whenever possible. We can engage that gift economy. I talked about this a little bit already. Gratitude and reciprocity, as you know, it's very easy to talk about gratitude because it's so obvious. It's so obviously true that gratitude is really good magic. Gratitude is really good luck magic. Gratitude is really good anti-depression magic. Like just like people who say thank you are happier people. It's just fact. Gratitude just is really excellent and beautiful. And so doubling down on your gratitude practice and then realizing that you have so many to be grateful to. Well, not just so much to be grateful for, but also so many to be grateful to. So many interactions that you've made or had with people who may or may not be in human form. All of the plants that you eat, or all of the plants that who made sure that you could have some nice oxygen to breathe, or all the plants who you just said hi to. Sometimes it's nice to just have friends and do a little greeting. You know, I love plants, and so I talk a lot about plants. But animals are the same way. Lessons are the same way. Maybe there are ancestors around you, ancestor spirits or spirits of the dead. Maybe the land has some spirits around you. Maybe there's some kind of landmark, the mountain, the river, these kinds of things, which have, which do a lot of things that you can't even necessarily think of, that do stuff, that create climate conditions and like all this sort of stuff, like big stuff. But we get to just live here, and in the living, then we can, have a lot of gratitude around that. And if we lead with that kind of gratitude, let's say gratitude for land and ancestor spirits, then we can position ourselves such that reciprocity is like a thing that we are interested in. Like there's a little sense of like, oh wow, so much has been given to me. I really feel like I should give back in some way. I feel like I should, if it's plants who have given me given me something nice to breathe, maybe I should go and water them from time to time. Maybe I should go and touch them and give them a little bit of this like microbiome exchange, right? Some of the exosomes, excuse me, and endogenous bacteria that I have, I can like show that to the plant, and then the plant can sort of like engage with that and learn a thing or two about what it is to live in my body, and what it is to live in the world in general, and become stronger as a result of that. We are all made stronger by this exchange. Diversity in the network really makes for a strong community and a strong web, right? And so interaction between all that, and especially the kind of positive interaction that is generated around gratitude, right? Not the kind of interaction like, people who chop trees and mow lawns and stuff like that. There's interaction there, right? They're doing stuff. But it's like it's much more like it's a dominating interaction rather than the kind of interaction which speaks to generosity and gratitude and reciprocity, to sort of like give and take and take and give. We're in this together because we are both citizens of the earth, because we are both cells in the body of the great earth that we live on. This kind of thing, you know. Um, and then this kind of gets back to the respiration, right? JP did a great job earlier of sort of like getting everybody to breathe, and the I mentioned before that the breath is so very immediate. Like you lose your breath and you're dead fairly immediately. The it's so very present. It's so very right here and now, that the breath can is just is life itself, and is an invaluable technique for calming mind and engaging mind. And we also happen to be one of the few creatures um, who has voluntary breath. Many creatures, like dogs, for example. Dogs don't breathe voluntarily. They can't like hold their breath, or any of that sort of stuff. They can't like your dog is not gonna do your Wim Hof breathing with you. You know what I mean? Like even if they want to, like they don't have what it takes to do that. They don't have this kind of voluntary diaphragm control. We do. This is really useful for speaking and singing and this kind of thing, but it's also really useful for engaging mind. A lot of people use the breath as a spiritually grounding technique. A lot of people use breath for calming. A lot of people use breath for energizing in the morning, or before some kind of important venture, or before doing a talk like this one, for example, or any of this kind of stuff, right? The breath is such a viscerally important exercise, which by its nature is relational, which is by its nature in and out, and which is a microcosm of the great respiration that takes place on the whole earth. It's a really good way of engaging together. And speaking of breathing together and engaging with mind together, that's I really like this word conspire here, because it means breathing together. We can think of conspiracy as like a little bit like the Aquarius conference, right? As everybody got together and sort of like talked it out, what I mean? And like there, even on that, there was like a locked door, and Mars had to be outside, and so there was like a little bit of conspiration around what he was going to do, or like conspiracy around how we're going to deal with this guy or whatever, right? But the idea here is that there is togetherness in conspiring. And, so if really what we're looking for is a kind of togetherness, then we can do some great work in just breathing together, just breathing at the same time, or breathing in the same place, and breathing with, we don't necessarily have to breathe only with humans. We can breathe with the trees and all this kind of thing. So actually, I'm going to invite y'all to do a little breath exercise with me here. I know some of y'all are like making your lunch and all this. Like that's cool, boo boo. Do you? But I just I think that it's a really good exercise. It's a good time for us to sort of get together here. So what we're going to do is a quick box breath. So I'm going to count 4, inhale, count 4, hold, count 4, exhale, count 4, hold, and we're going to do that 4 times. So everybody with me, here we go. Breathe in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold, in, hold, out, hold. Thank y'all so much for taking that moment with me to breathe together. And I figure I'll close here in just a little bit. So one of the reasons why I love Robin Wallkimmer so much is because I also am I come from Potawatomi people. My mom is Prairie Band Potawatomi. So Robin Wallkimmer, that's my auntie, and she wrote this really amazing book, and it's super great. And so my grandpa, my Michel, he was very strongly interested in. I mean, he was just a word nerd in general. He loved like taking things. Dairy Queen, he would call it Queridine and all that sort of stuff. He liked word jokes. Like, did you know that diarrhea is hereditary? It runs in your genes. Like, he loved that shit. And so, but one of the things, but he also was a fluent speaker of Potawatomi, and one of his favorite things to talk about was so the word for stick in Potawatomi is tuk, and the word for man is nena, and the word for tree is tukwabao nena, and tukwabao nena puts together tuk and nena, and so it really sort of speaks to the man in the tree, right? And this is really like strongly emblematic of the idea that there is a person in there, that the tree is somebody, is a man unto himself, and that is recognized even down in the language. And so there's some. This really speaks to the ancientness of this kind of thought pattern, and it's a really good way for us to remember that there is life wherever we look for it, wherever we sort of are willing to ask the question. So then, with this in mind, as one more moment of I would like the content or the form of this presentation to reflect the content of it. And so for a little bit, if you'll indulge me, I am going to use my breath in order to sing a song of Thanksgiving. One other thing about Indians I wanted to say was that there's a way of another mode of speech that Native Americans often use, and they'll use a term or a phrase called "all my relations." And so, in all my relations, there's and an acknowledgement that, so all my relations are all the people around me. They're the tree people and the beaver people and the bird people, and there's an acknowledgement that we are all related, and not only are we all related, but humans are the young ones. We're the ones who like don't really know what's going on yet. And so we need to take some pointers from the elders. And so a lot of times you will hear people talking about all my relations, or as a way of referring to the great created mass of life that we live in. So just bear that in mind, that that's what we're doing here. So. I want to thank you. Thank you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. To all my relations in the land who keep on coming through, living the magic of your life, it got me feeling gratitude. When I wake up with the sunrise, I see abundance all around. Waving my hands up in the sky to thank the blessings for coming down. I want to say thank you. Thank you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. To all my relations in the land who keep on coming through, living the magic of your life, it got me feeling gratitude. When I wake up with the sunrise, I see abundance all around. Waving my hands up in the sky to thank the blessings for coming down. I want to say thank you. Thank you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. I appreciate the love that you show me. I appreciate that you're still here. I appreciate the love that you show me. I appreciate you, 'cause I'm still here. Sometimes I be tripping and I forget to thank you. But when it's missing, I want you to know that I appreciate you. Sometimes I be tripping and I forget to thank you. But when it's missing, I want you to know that I appreciate you. Ooh, I want to thank you. 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 wanna thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. To all my relations in the land who keep on coming through, living the magic of your life and got me feeling gratitude. When I wake up with the sunrise, I see abundance all around. Waving my hands up in the sky to thank the blessings for coming down. I want to say thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yeah. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Thank y'all so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for hearing what I have to say. Um, we did it. Here we are. We made it. The end. Here's some links and shit. You can find me.
Oh my God. Let me compose myself to thank you. That was beautiful. Here, I'll show you my crying face. That was beautiful, Zamboni. Thank you so much. We have 5 minutes. If anyone has a question to pop in, we probably have time for one. We probably all just want to sit in this moment and just enjoy it.
Word.
Yeah, that was great. Also, a lot of really great content to think about. I just can't get over how beautiful that was. I'm reading through all these comments. People are feeling the same way too. So lots of gratitude in this group. And what a beautiful way to kick off our day together. Breathing in joy.
Indeed, indeed.
Cool.
It's always a good day when we can leave with gratitude.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. And it's harder to tap into sometimes. We've been thinking lately about all the stuff that's happening around us, and this is a really good reminder that there's so much to be grateful for. Yay. I'm just giving us a second in case a question surfaces, but I think we can also
somebody asked for the words of this song.
Oh yeah, that would be great.
So to all my relations in the land who keep on coming through, living the magic of your life and got me feeling gratitude. When I wake up with the sunrise, I see abundance all around. I'm waving my hands up in the sky to thank the blessings for coming down. Sometimes I be tripping and I forget to thank you. But when it's missing, I want you to know that I appreciate you. So
awesome. Thanks.
That's what we're doing. Thanks for listening to that song. I'm proud of that song. I wrote it.
So. Really? It's beautiful.
Yeah, I wrote that
Bravo. Yay. Well, we'll let the love pour in. And everybody,
bring it on. Love me.
Yeah, totally. Truly a gift. Someone was just going to ask who wrote it. Beautiful. Absolutely glorious. So lovely and so healing. Just so many great comments. Thanks for the shared experience. So much gratitude pouring in. Yeah. Moved to tears. We had a lot of tears in the house.
Wow. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I feel so honored to receive that kind of emotional output. Thank you so much.
Good. Well, we feel honored that you brought us all together in this way and connected us. I really felt it too when we were breathing. The breath together was really lovely. It puts us all in a good space today to make connections, connect with other folks who want to think, about the future and visionary, using this language that we all share is a really beautiful time. Cool.
I will make conspiracy theorists out of all of you.
I'm here for it. We're all here for it. You're a gift, Zamboni. And lots of appreciation for the recommendations, how to prepare for this age forward and bring it with them. Thanks for sharing your song. Yeah, just so much love. Cool. Well, we are at our time. We're going to take a little break. Please hang out here during the break. Feel free. You don't have to go anywhere, but we'll just be setting up for Palace, who is up next at 11:30 Pacific time, so in 17 minutes. So feel free to hang out, keep chatting with each other, keep chatting with Zamboni. We'll be here. So yeah, let's just chill.